But his words stayed with me, buried deep beneath layers of success and denial. Years later, I had everything I ever wanted: money, power, status. But somehow I still felt empty, and I never understood why, until that letter arrived.
I'm 62 years old, and there's something I've never told my son. Not when he was a child, not when he became a man. And now, I'm not even sure I ever will. Because hidden inside my desk, beneath the loose wooden panel I installed myself more than 20 years ago, there's a letter. A letter that could destroy everything he believes about me. A letter that could make my own son hate me forever. And the worst part is not what's written in it, but why it exists in the first place. Because this story doesn't begin with that letter. It begins a long time ago, when I still believed I was a good man. Back when I was younger, driven, hungry, and convinced that success was the only thing that mattered in life. My name is Daniel Carter, and I built everything I have from nothing. I worked late nights, sacrificed sleep, ignored everything that didn't directly move me forward. And for a while it worked. I had a growing business, a beautiful home in a quiet suburban neighborhood, and a wife who once looked at me like I was her entire world. And then our son Ethan was born, and I remember holding him for the first time, thinking I would be different, that I would give him everything I never had, that I would be present, supportive, the kind of father a child could look up to. But life has a way of turning promises into excuses, and as my business grew, so did my distance from the things that actually mattered. Ethan grew up in comfort. He had the best schools, nice clothes, everything a kid could want, except time, my time. Every evening he would wait near the front door, holding a toy or a drawing, just waiting for me to come home. But most nights I came home late, and when I did, I was exhausted, too tired to listen, too distracted to care. He would run up to me with excitement in his eyes and say, "Dad, look what I made today!" And I would respond without even looking, "Not now, Ethan, I'm busy." And I must have said those words hundreds of times, and I don't remember most of them, but he did. He remembered every single one. One day when he was about 12, he walked into my office holding a drawing. I was on a call, stressed and irritated. He stood there quietly for a moment and said, "Dad, I made this for you." And without even turning around, I raised my hand and said, "Ethan, not now." And there was silence for a few seconds before he softly said, "Okay," and closed the door. And that was the last time he ever showed me something he created. Years passed, and slowly something changed. Ethan stopped trying, stopped talking, stopped sharing, and I was too busy chasing success to notice. Or maybe I noticed but chose to ignore it, because facing it would mean admitting I was failing at the one thing that actually mattered, being a father. And then one day, everything started to fall apart. I was sitting in my office going through paperwork when I noticed an envelope on my desk. It hadn't been there before. There was no stamp, no return address, just my name written on it, Daniel Carter. I picked it up, feeling a strange unease, and opened it. Inside was a single piece of paper with a message that made my blood run cold. It said, "Daniel, the truth always finds its way back. You can hide it from your son, but not forever. And when he finds out, he won't see you as a father. He'll see you for what you really are." And as I read those words, my hands started shaking, because deep down I knew exactly what it meant. It was about something I had buried for years, something I had convinced myself no longer mattered, something I had locked away just like that letter, more than 20 years ago. When my business was still small, I had a partner. His name was Michael Hayes, and he trusted me more than anyone. We built everything together from the ground up, long nights, early mornings, shared dreams, shared struggles. And when things finally started to work, we were supposed to share the success equally, 50-50. That was the agreement. But then an opportunity came along, a big one, the kind that could change everything. But it required full control. And I knew that if Michael stayed, I would have to share it. And I didn't want to share anymore.
I wanted it all, so I made a choice. The worst choice of my life. I manipulated contracts, moved assets behind his back, used legal loopholes he didn't understand. And slowly, I pushed him out of the company we built together until one day, he had nothing left. He came to my office holding documents with confusion written all over his face and said, "Daniel, what is this?" And I looked him straight in the eyes and lied. I told him it was just business, that he should have paid more attention, that this is how the world works. And he didn't argue. He didn't yell. He just stood there in silence before saying something that has haunted me ever since. He said, "One day, you'll lose something you can't buy back." And then he walked away, and I never saw him again. But his words stayed with me, buried deep beneath layers of success and denial. Years later, I had everything I ever wanted: money, power, status. But somehow I still felt empty, and I never understood why, until that letter arrived. Because now, after all these years, the past had come back. And it wasn't just a memory anymore. It was a threat. I started watching Ethan more closely. The way he looked at me had changed. There was something in his eyes I couldn't quite understand. Or maybe something I was afraid to understand. One night I walked into my study and noticed something strange. My desk drawer was slightly open. I never leave it open. Never. My heart started pounding as I walked closer, slowly, carefully. And then I saw it. The hidden compartment wasn't fully closed. My hands trembled as I opened it, and there it was, the letter still inside. But something was wrong. It wasn't in the same position. Someone had touched it, moved it, maybe even read it. And in that moment, a terrifying thought crossed my mind. What if it was Ethan? That night I couldn't sleep. For the first time in years I was afraid, not of losing money or status, but of losing my son. Because if he knew the truth, if he knew what I had done, he wouldn't just hate me. He would understand something far worse. That the man he called father was not a good man. The next morning I tried to act normal, but everything felt different. Every glance from him felt heavier, every silence louder. Days passed and the tension grew, until one evening Ethan walked into my study, something he hadn't done in years. He stood there quietly, just like he used to when he was a kid, and said, "Dad, can we talk?" And my chest tightened because there was something in his voice I hadn't heard before. Calm, controlled, but heavy. I nodded and told him to sit down, and for a moment neither of us said anything. Then he looked at me and said, "I found something in your desk." And in that moment my entire world stopped. I felt the air leave my lungs as I tried to keep my voice steady and asked, "What do you mean?" And he didn't break eye contact as he said, "The letter." And there it was, the moment I had feared for years. The truth standing right in front of me. And for the first time in my life, I didn't know what to say. I had spent decades building a life, a reputation, a version of myself that people respected. But none of that mattered now, because the only person whose opinion truly mattered was sitting across from me, waiting for an answer. I could lie again, just like I did all those years ago. I could deny everything, make up another story, protect the image I had created. Or I could finally tell the truth. The truth I had been running from my entire life. And as I looked at my son, I realized something I should have understood a long time ago. That success means nothing if you lose the people who matter. That money can't fix regret. And that some mistakes don't disappear no matter how deeply you bury them. They wait, they grow, and eventually they come back. And in that moment I made a choice. Not the kind of choice I used to make, driven by greed or fear, but a different kind, a harder kind. I took a deep breath and said, "There's something I need to tell you." And for the first time in decades, I told the truth. Not just about the letter, but about everything. About Michael, about the betrayal, about the lies, about the man I used to be. And as I spoke, I could see the pain in Ethan's eyes, the disappointment, the anger. But also something else, something I didn't expect. Understanding. Not forgiveness, not yet, but understanding. And when I finished, there was a long silence before he finally said, "You should have told me sooner." And he was right. I should have, years ago, before the distance grew, before the silence became normal, before the regret became permanent. And as he stood up to leave, he paused at the door and said something that gave me a small sense of hope. He said, "It's not too late to be honest." And then he walked out. And for the first time in a long time, I sat there not as a successful man, not as a businessman, but as a father who finally understood what really matters. And the truth is, the letter was never the real secret. I was. And maybe, just maybe, it's not too late to change that.